Hey everyone, what is going on? What is going on? Welcome to That Man Show. My name is Curtis Brooks. I am your host, executive coach, and men's life coach, specializing in transformational leadership for men. Guys, we got a wonderful show for you this evening. I'm super excited because I got a good buddy of mine. We've become absolutely great friends over time here. We actually met on LinkedIn and over a conversation. So he's going to be joining us. I'll give you more information in just 1 second here. So. Uh, Kind of the protocol for let me get set up here for just 1 second here, and we'll make sure we can see your comments and all that good stuff there. And I hope everyone is doing well. Matter of fact, we are streaming to several platforms. LinkedIn is going to be our primary platform, and where we're streaming to. We're also streaming to Facebook, my personal Facebook page under Curtis Brooks, and also my YouTube channel at Men's Life Coaching on YouTube. Once more, at Men's Life Coaching over on YouTube. So check us out there. I know Marcia, you've been hanging out over on YouTube for the last few shows, and so hopefully I'll remember that you're over there. So thank you for always supporting us as well. So we got a great show for you, and we are talking about the state of leadership. 1 second here. We're talking about the state of leadership in mental health, overcoming the power struggle. So oftentimes dealing with mental health. Hey, Dr. Marcia over on LinkedIn. Thank you for joining. So oftentimes dealing with leadership, there is going to be a mental health aspect of it, and just doing life as a whole, there is always going to be a mental health aspect of just doing life. So whether you are operating as a leader in a organization, or just even as a parent, as a leader, there's going to be a mental aspect of leadership, and that does in fact come with a power struggle. And so we're going to give you some tips on overcoming that power struggle. But before I do that, I want to make sure I get the proper introduction for my good friend of mine. And so we're going to be having as a just a powerhouse of a guest. This is Mr. Wayne Dawson, and he is the CEO and founder of VIP Transformative Living LLC. He's a transformational coach who specializes in helping high achieving men, particularly men of color in midlife, break free from the constraints that keep you from feeling stuck despite their awkward success. Wayne brings his signature VIP coaching blueprint approach, focusing on values, identity, and purpose to help men navigate major life transitions and reclaim their authentic power. So without further ado, guys, let me introduce my good friend, Wayne. You're going to be on screen all by yourself, brother. So take it away and give us more information about who you are.
Hey, beloved brother Curtis, good evening to you, brother. It is finally here. We've been talking about this for some time, and so it is my esteemed pleasure and a privilege to be joining you on your platform. Thank you for having me, my brother. As Curtis said, folks, I am Coach Wayne. I go by the VIP coach. My signature program is to help men to reevaluate where they stand, restore their values, reimagine their purpose, and redefine their identity. And I help men of color navigate midlife so that their second half can be their best half.
Absolutely. Thank you, Wayne. Wayne, it is absolutely a pleasure having you on with us, man. We're going to dive more into this here. So, before we dive into it, I want to give you guys some stats here in regards to this the state of leadership, because there's some serious stats here, as it relates to leadership. So the first one is 56% of leaders experience burnout in 2024, up from 52% in 2023, with 43% of companies losing half their leadership teams to burnout related to turnover. All right. The second stat, 55% of CEOs reported having mental health issues in the past year, representing a dramatic 24-point increase from 31% the previous year. And I'm going to continue reading a few more of these stats so that you get the message. There is a serious issue related to the state of leadership. And so we've got the next stat: 55% of CEOs reported having mental health issues in the past year, representing, I think I just read that one. So we got 60% of millennial CEOs are most likely to have experienced mental health issues, including anxiety, depression, loneliness, or obsessive compulsive disorder. 53% of managers reporting feeling burned out at work, with stress and burnout leaders being 3.5 times more likely to leave their positions. Nearly one in 10 men experience depression or anxiety, yet less than half will receive treatment, and four are more times more likely to die by offing themselves than women. Last one here. There's still more, but this is my last one here. 77% of men suffered symptoms of common mental health conditions like anxiety, stress, or depression, but 40% of men never spoke to anyone about their mental health. Now, Wayne, what's your take on that, brother?
It's a lot of stats to recall, brother. So
Yeah.
all I can say is what I'm seeing is from what you've said and from what I've experienced, a lot of men are quietly suffering. And there is a correlation, obviously, in terms of leadership. Don't know if it's a causal situation between leadership and the burnout and mental health issues that men are dealing with. The American Psychological Association refers to mental health as really a state of um, uh, well-being, right? Where individuals can express their emotional, psychological, and social state, well-being that enables them to function throughout the course of their day-to-day things in a normal way, a normative way, coping with stresses of life. And so we all, to some extent, have to deal with stresses, and how we respond, obviously, is what makes the difference in terms of how we are seen as sound mentally, mental health. And brothers that I work with men of color, are struggling because there is, especially for men, and so I don't know if we want to talk about men in particular right here with those stats, but leaders in general deal with this. But the men that I work with, what I find is that they suffer in pain because asking for help
Hmm.
oftentimes opens up a fissure, an area of so-called or perceived weakness or vulnerability that then takes away from their position of strength as a leader. And a lot unto whom a lot is given, a lot is demanded or expected. So when you are in fact leading others, the expectation is that you have broad shoulders. And so
Hmm.
I recognize that so many of the men that I coach come to me and they are in need, they're seeping in terms of pain, and they're in need of comfort, they're in need of a resource, an outlet by which they can allay and put away some of that pain, my brother. And oftentimes they deal with it through maladaptive ways. And we'll talk about that as we get through.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I love what you've shared there. I think I kind of want to dive right into this because I think there, for me, and working with clients and working with men in the past, I found there's a mask that men often wear. There's a mask that they wear, and that mask, unfortunately, it prevents us from showing up the best version of ourselves. And I think that mask is often just associated with what society prepares for us a lot of times, unfortunately. And I think that when we're unwilling to take the lead in our lives, or even knowing that that is something that we must do, regardless of your position, whether an individual, a man has grown up with a father in a household or raised by a single mother or single parent, he must take his position as a leader. And I often in my different discussions, I talk about leadership, not necessarily just a individual holding a title at an organization, but taking full responsibility or accountability for the leadership that or the different things that take place in our own individual lives. And so, and I know that you work with lots of men, and so uh, is there a lot of is there truth to this mask piece of it?
Well, the reality is that as men, there's an expectation in our society that we got, uh, we protect, provide, and we preside in many instances. And in corporate as well as in the community, the men that I work with, again, I'm gonna deflect and talk about men of color because that is my niche,
Mm,
that is my wheelhouse, that's who I represent and who I am and what I know most of, so I can speak to that. But it's not necessarily always unique to men of color. But there is this expectation and demand that men are going to be able to, as they say, man up. And so a lot of times men are under the pressure that others face,
mm,
our female counterparts face in terms of folding through psychological, emotional, even physical and spiritual duress, and women are oftentimes allowed to escape and ask for help. Men, it's changing, but have for a long time been presented with a man's box. And so what we do is we hide our fears and our pain and put on this image of being able to get through and show strength. So the image that you're talking about is the mask that we wear. And yes, I see it very often.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that mask, man. Unfortunately, before I get to dive further into that, Marcia his is here over on LinkedIn. She says that's not an expectation; it's a godly mandate for men to protect, provide, and lead their families. Interesting, and I would agree with that, Dr. Marcia. I definitely would agree with that. Unfortunately, I think a lot of what the world has to say about what a man is or what his responsibility is has unfortunately crept into the church, and so that's just kind of, and I absolutely agree with you, but I unfortunately do think that a lot of ideas have hey, Sharito, thank you for joining over here on LinkedIn. Appreciate you. And we've got Mark D over on Facebook. Thank you for joining us over on Facebook, Mark. And Joshua Lee here and linked over on LinkedIn. Thank you for joining. And again, Sharito, thank you for joining here over on LinkedIn as well. So I was going to say with the mask, I think the mask it challenges all of us, and I think it is a theme that we or theme or an outfit that many of us have unfortunately put on. I think that mask is part of the indoctrination process. Uh, and many of us will, hey, Mark, thank you for joining, Mark. Peace and blessings, Mark says over here on LinkedIn. I think, unfortunately, that mask is part of the indoctrination process. And, you have to be looking for something. You have to be looking to, there was a situation and I'll use biblical references here as well, but there's a situation where David was trying on armor, trying on Saul's armor, and I think that life sometimes places us in situations where we're we're wrapped up in people's stuff, other people's stuff, and trying to fit ourselves in other people's situations or the 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 many things that this world society has placed upon us is like that armor that we are wearing and having to try to fit ourselves into that space, unfortunately. And we're finding out that, hey, wait a minute, this stuff doesn't fit, this is not my stuff. And I think with that it comes with us having to uh, wear a mask for an extended period of time until we recognize, hey, wait a minute, this is not who I am. And I think a lot of us, our a lot of us are coming out of that space. Fortunately, we're saying, "Hey, this is not my stuff," and it is important for us to understand that this mask, I believe, is just the work of control, basically. It does take a time for us as people to figure out who we are and to understand that wearing these different type of masks or wearing the outfit of that someone has fitted us for and that's not our stuff, it absolutely is going to create a burden. Uh, and I think that's where the mental health piece comes in. And again, Wayne, I know that you deal with a lot of men. Again, specifically, as you mentioned, you work with men of color. And share with us the burden that a lot of men, that the men of color are dealing with. And then I know, being a man of color, I'm dealing with these burdens as well. So, but I want to hear what you have to say in regards to the burden that men of color are dealing with, because ideally, we could look at, different uh, uh, races of people, groups of people, and say that, hey, these people aren't dealing with this. But unless we know what people are dealing with, we can we can we can have the right conversations with people. We can make sure that we're sensitive to other people's needs. So that being said, Wayne, share with us some of the challenges that our men of color are dealing with as it regards to I know you mentioned the mask, but uh, the mental health aspect of it as well.
Okay. So, we there's a narrative out there that says that black men, and I call it the Paul syndrome, and I
Mm,
see a lot of brothers, I don't want to say suffering, but afflicted with the Paul syndrome. And the Paul syndrome, the acronym PAW, PAW, stands for possibility. A
mm,
lot of brothers struggle with the idea that success and progress and realizing their vision and their mission is really possible.
mm,
It's what we know as learned hopelessness. And that's, of course, weighs on the mental uh, aspect of the man. And then there is ability. A lot of brothers, and we talked about imposter syndrome, but a lot of brothers are in a spot where they don't think they have the
mm,
capacity or the ability to get to the next level, to fulfill the obligation, the mission that's required of them, the standards that society has set, that mama, daddy has set, the school system has set, the religious framework has set. And this is learned helplessness.
mm,
And the last one, which is in fact the most uh, apparently infectious one among brothers that I work with, is the W, which is worthiness.
mm,
A lot of brothers don't think that they are enough.
mm,
A sense of I'm not deserving, learned worthlessness. And we don't walk in with a conscious, I guess, pronouncement that these things are happening. But at the subconscious or unconscious levels, brothers are dealing with these issues, what I call the Paul syndrome. And it's heavy on the last one, the W, that sense of not being enough. And this is because we have a society that imposes on us that these things are supposed to be. You're not good enough. You don't belong. You can't do it. First hired, last fired. Got to work twice as hard to be half paid. And so we wind up carrying this burden on us. And that, of course, shows up in terms of our mental health and wellness.
absolutely. Yeah, Wayne, I'm gonna dive more to that because this show, though I'm interviewing you, but this is about you, brother. So I want to hear from you more about what you have to share. So I'm gonna say this real quick here. This is from LinkedIn over on LinkedIn here from Dr. Marcia. She says, life happens, and men succumb to worldly standards so that the image becomes distorted because men seek external validation and hide behind societal expectations and mask and mask of success instead of power and make significance. Life happens. Yeah, Dr. Marcia, I do agree with you. I think it also has to, again, it has to, it has to be with, I think, it's something that we learn basically, and I think to what, uh, Wayne had just said, Coach Wayne had just said, is that this is something that we learn. And then I think the challenge is unlearning it because it can absolutely take years to unlearn it, a lifetime to unlearn it. Unfortunately, because we're so it's been so ingrained in us, and if we can, I would like to even add on to that is that if we can understand that uh, if an animal has been abused for a long and extended period of time, and you pick up this animal maybe from a shelter, and you have no idea exactly what's going on, but they tell you that the animal has been abused, but because the animal has been abused for such a long extended period of time, uh, that animal is going to be it's going to need to be shown some kind of love or just the opposite of what it's been receiving. And my point is that if we can understand the effects of this on an animal, and I think unfortunately a lot of times we'll take that road and say, oh, why the poor animal, the poor animal. But if we can understand this effects on an animal, why can't we understand these effects on a human being? And I think this equally important when people are under extended amounts of pressure, it absolutely is going to affect them, and we have to. You can't just toss that in the trash and say, "Hey, that's not oh, just get over it." It just doesn't work that way. And and scientists know that, they absolutely understand that. Hey, Henry, thank you for joining over on LinkedIn. I appreciate you. Thank you, Audrey, Ms. Dawson. Thank you for joining. Appreciate you for joining us. And we've got Mark. Mark says he gives a quote here. Wayne, I definitely want to hear back from you. Give me 1 second here. So Mark says a quote here over on LinkedIn. He says Rimsa. I don't know how to pronounce the last name. He says we are people of culture, not people of color. Wayne, what's your take on that? The ball's in your court, brother. This is the Wayne show today.
There's something unique when you're a black man and you wear the skin of a black man. And we can play the game and get fluffy and talk about, with all due respect, Mark, don't know uh, what's your predisposition, but we can get into the semantics of culture and color and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, when I walk into a room, people don't necessarily define me by my culture because I haven't spoken
Mm.
yet, but they certainly darn well see my color. And so a lot of times we lead with our color, not because we necessarily put our hand up to be the first to be selected or identified as that, but because that's how people see us. And in a space where color oftentimes define privileges and access, as in these shores of North America, being a man of color is definitely a distinction that has to be heralded. So we can't try to diffuse it and mingle the both of them about color versus culture. We are men of color, and that is how the world sees us. Um, we can be a man of color and acculturate into a system, even though we didn't belong to the system. We can't acculturate or accolorate into a foreign color if that's not who we are. So we're a mask or bask in that, and there is no getting away from that. And so that's a sense of ownership that we have to deal with every day when we get up. There's no makeup to defend or hide or protect us from that. That's a reality. That's part of who we are in terms of our identity. Now, some people may wish to defy that reality and define themselves differently. And I hear people walking into a room and say, and this is such an insult when people say, I don't see color. You got to see me because I'm a black man. And so I stand in front of you. Don't tell me you don't see color. That's trite and simplistic and insulting. And so, when people say this, and I know some people would say this because what they're trying to say is, well, it doesn't matter. It does matter because that's what you see.
Yeah, that's absolutely excellent, Wayne. Uh, Mark says over here on LinkedIn here, he says, "Thank you, Wayne." And this is from an earlier comment here when you explained Paul. He says, "Thank you, Coach Wayne. The concept learned worthiness deeply resonated." So he wants to Dr. Marcia says, thank God for coaches like Wayne Dawson who understand the angles and leverage of the roles and responsibilities of men and how they intersect from the inside. Your mission is honorable and needed. Absolutely, absolutely. I've been knowing this brother for quite some time now, so and I'm honored to know him. So, like I said, this is though this is a show I've started some months ago. This is actually going to be the Wayne show today. So we're going to I want to hear from this brother, hear his thought process, and we need to hear more of these conversations. Uh, Wayne, my question to you: you mentioned about we talked about the mask in regards to men of color. Now let's take this in this same idea into the organizations and what are they dealing with on an organization level. And I know that you've worked in leadership for quite some time as well. So what is the consensus? What is the conversations just from within the confines of different organizations?
It's a good question. And so I worked as a leader in one of the country's oldest and strongest non-for-profits. We were based in New York. And so I led that organization, multiple sites for about 17 years, and then moved on. And when I came to Florida, the Republic of Florida, when I came to Florida, uh, I started as, or went into corporate America and also had a leadership position there for a while before I decided to fire corporate America and start my own entrepreneurial journey or vision. If I was going to work so darn hard and be rewarded, then I thought, why not do this for myself? Why, not everybody I'm saying shouldn't work for a W-2, but for me, it was time to burn the ships on the beaches and just move forward in the way of an entrepreneur. What I found to be true in both corporate and the non-for-profit world, and I understand from friends who are in the Department of in government areas and in the military as well, that men of color, again, we're going to deal with whom I know best intimately, myself and brothers who uh, look like me. Men of color oftentimes are caught up in the code switching game. Do you know what that is? Let me explain. Code switching is when you you go along to get along. So I'm not saying you're going to walk in there, and be peace out and carry on as a rebel, but oftentimes we have to hide behind the facade of not wanting to make our counterparts uncomfortable, not wanting to ruffle them by being black, to be honest. And what do I mean by that? I mean to just share your sentiments about a decision in corporate, say, that may enact a policy around a community that they're serving that looks like you that doesn't benefit that community. And so you recognize that, you know, the opportunity to even comment on a news item, sometimes in places where the folks around you don't look like you and don't understand how you get up and get through the morning. how and what it means for you as a black man to be driving to work, knowing that there is a police siren behind you and your heart skips a beat, right? And this is what we deal with on a daily basis. And so the way that you are assessing, you know, you're looking at your SWOT, your strengths and your weaknesses and opportunities and threats, maybe through slightly different lenses. But oftentimes you have to hold your tongue and hold back, right? I know a CEO. I had a meeting with him today, one of my clients, and his board, which is primarily white, uh, he has to hold back some of his true sensibilities about the population they serve because they just don't get it. And rather than lock heads, he will negotiate to land softly so that they can move through. Now, I know a lot of brothers that go through this on a daily basis, and it's tiring. It's mental fatigue. And so they get home and they just want to be understood. They walk in the house and the home is expecting them to step up. Mommy's had a full day as well, and she can't wait to pass on the baby just so that she could get a break. And as men in the house, we have a responsibility to share in that, right? But we come home and we're just so fatigued from that code switching and playing small and going along to get along that we just need some time to debrief. And oftentimes that takes us away from the impact and influence that we should have in the home as well.
Absolutely, Wayne. Absolutely, absolutely. So there is essentially a completely different story from one set of people or group of people from another. There's completely different stories, and um, there is overcoming that power struggle. Leadership in itself, as Wayne had mentioned, there's a code switching. I get it as a black man myself. I absolutely get it. There's a code switching that we have to do, and it is unfortunate, but the reality of it is that this is what we're dealing with. It can be challenging taking on uh, just trying to figure out what you're going to say, trying to figure out what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, if you said it the wrong way, or just playing it back in your head over and over, and trying to figure out what they're going to think about. What are they thinking in their head about what you said? You know, so there's a lot of work there, guys. There's a lot of work there. So as far as this power struggle, Wayne, I love what you said in regards to just when you come home, you basically want place of peace. You basically want a place of peace. So you and I have had many, many different conversations, and we talk for hours at times, brother. All hours, man. Literally, my wife says, "Is that Wayne?" Yes, yes. So we talk for hours, uh, and so how does spirituality play in this space in regards to overcoming the power struggle, or making some sense of what's going on, or can we make sense of all of this stuff that's going on?
Well, I reckon there's a beckoning as far as to keep ourselves grounded. One of the things that I do in my practice is there is spiritual time, and uh, it's that place you talked about peace. It's that place that you separate from the mundane and you find that peace. Uh, Peace is not necessarily given to you day to day as you go out there. We are seeing right now a world of chaos, right? That presents itself to us as we step out the door. You turn on the television or look at social media. And so the peace that you're seeking, you have to help yourself with create. There's nothing, as they say, no cavalry coming over the hills to rescue us.
Right.
We are the saviors we've been searching for. And so I think it's important that we are grounded. And if you have some sort of faith in something or someone greater than yourself, this is a solace. This is the way that you help to balance the mental chaos that's around you by looking at the inside. And to be honest with you, I'm quite as comfortable sitting with my brethren in their mosque, in the synagogue, in the shrine, in the temple, and in church, right?
Mm.
I've served on a board for a church for several years, and just as easily could go next door and sit with my brethren who is Islamic, because for me, it's more than just the doctrine and the dogmas of religion per se. It's a relationship which is intimate with my God, with my Creator. And so the spirituality that I'm talking about and that I seek is that divine connection with my Most High, however I deem that to be. And so I avoid the fights. I tell people all the time, I'm a vegan, but if I come to your house, I don't throw the chickens out of your refrigerator and the pork. I simply eat the vegetables from what you've provided, or the fruits, or the nuts as a vegan. And if you come to my house, I'll go shopping and prepare for you what you eat without any war or separation, because it's about peace and you make your peace. And other people have a different take on that. Some people want to beat you in the head to dictate or to convince you about what is right for you. I would say that I mind my soul in terms of what feels right and is my calling and right for me. So in terms of my spiritual, and again, I'll never tell someone where to go and what to do and how to receive and have build a relationship with whom they consider their creator and God, or Allah or Yahweh or whatever their name is and title is. All I want to know is that in my relationship with that person, there is mutual respect, and there is certainly an exhibition and demonstration of love.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. Now, I think for me, the spiritual component is major, major, major. Um, Many of you have been following me for quite some time now, know that I will often interject spirituality into my different conversations because it is absolutely, I believe, absolutely needed, and to greater understandings of who we are, backgrounds or motivations in regards to what's being taken place in the earth. In fact, what exactly what to an extent what's happening right now in the earth that we're living in or current situations. So it is again, it is important for us to understand that spirituality is a huge piece of coming out of the snare that has been created. And so, whether you're a man of color, and Wayne expressed it very well there, there's differences, and so for an individual to say that they don't see color, that's challenging in itself. It truly is, because that's how the world sees us, unfortunately. And this is not and when I share these things or this conversation is not a poor me or no, no, it's about an individual finding themselves. These conversations about be it a man of color or not. These conversations about an individual finding themselves, and when we find ourselves, we can find ourselves having to realize that there's a burden that's been placed on every last one of us. There's a burden that we're wearing, and unfortunately, the burden is the bulk of the burden is on men of color, unfortunately. But that's the way it is, and I think for you, Wayne, you mentioned, or we've talked about, these different conversations in the past. What are some solutions that that you offer your clients?
Thank you. So the first thing, you go to the doctor, right? And you go to the mechanic, or you invite an electrician to come to your house because something is off. The first thing that typically happens is what? You get an assessment, right?
Mm,
And the assessment tells you the states of where you are. And coaching is about looking at the here and now, the present, right? There are other forms of intervention that really looks deeper into your history and your past and your triggers and works from that standpoint to develop it. We will revisit the past oftentimes for the purpose of gathering data, information to move forward and be present. And we really focus on delivering a future possibility for you in coaching, right? So I start off with assessing the individual in terms of where they are, where they'd like to be, and what the gap is.
mm,
Now, a lot of times there is a perception that's warped in terms of what the reality is. So, as much as possible, I use objective measures to determine where the person is and where they would like to be is a future possibility. Wherever that gap is, I then develop a reality check in terms of identifying what is the reason or the perceived reason or reasons why the person has not ascertained or gotten to where they aspire to be. Some folks know this to be limited, what we call a mar in our belief system, limited beliefs. All right. People have limitations on their belief systems. And let me just quickly back up and say this. This is my idea of how reality is formed. We begin with a belief system. The belief system that we have about a thing, a place, a person, or a circumstance is then delivered through our thoughts about the thing, our words, our actions. Actions repeated repeatedly become habits. The habits we create then determine the outcome we have or our personal reality. Our personal reality, which is our personality, is who we are, who we become. So when you show a person uh, that thinking, that way of thinking, it begins then with changing their belief system. I help people to reimagine or reorient their beliefs. Oftentimes we go through life with very false, flaky belief system that unfortunately sometimes we're not responsible for. They were imprinted on us by our earliest caregivers or in our modeling as preteens or our socialization as we became adults, right? These are ways that we get formed belief systems. We live sometimes with our 7-year-old beliefs when we are 27, 37 years old, still using programs that didn't, well, served us when we were 7, but certainly doesn't serve us now. So I do a lot of work with helping men to get through that. Then I help them to identify their values, core values. See, a lot of us spend our life living a lie. We fake it till we make it, but we never make it because we're always faking it. We are living with value systems that aren't ours. I help people to identify what their values are so that there's congruence with you can, sleep well, look in the mirror. You don't have to lie to yourself if you're living according to your values, right? And that's where I think folks who are,
Ecumenical.
pardon me, did you hear that?
I apologize. It's my fault, but I apologize. Go ahead.
Okay. So with the values, oftentimes folks are have their values meted out to them and are held accountable by religious organizations, for example. And then I help people with identifying their I am. So again, my VIP represents values, identity, and when your identity is in alignment with your value system, your purpose comes knocking at the door. Your purpose, in my mind, is a divine assignment. It's not something you can run away from, even though sometimes we try. There's a calling, a beckoning, a reckoning, something that you were born to be and do, just you. And many of us go to our transitional phase, are unlived, as they say, without ever finding our purpose because we don't stay silent and still long enough to hear the inner voice, the divine calling, and then to be obedient. So, my work, though it's transformational coaching, and I work with executives as well as people fresh out of school. I mean, I focus on midlifers, but along the way, through the continuum, I work with anyone who wants to do the work. And by the way, any race of men who want to do the work. My expertise is with brothers and the women who love them. And so here's the thing that I've discovered, and I'll shut up after this. There's transitional change, which is temporary. You can, if you're caught up in a bad habit, you simply have to change the environment, move away from the habit, sell the TV or if you watch TV all day, or take the shelves, the liquor off the shelves, if drinking is your thing at home. Those things are transitional in terms of transient changes. They happen, but they are usually temporal. They're not necessarily hard keeping. And people do that all the time. The weight gain, weight loss, it's, I got to get to a wedding. And so I got to do this loss of weight right now. And I do this, but it's not sustainable. The higher level or the more enduring level is, which is transformational change, is change at the identity level. If you see yourself as a skinny person and you own that to be your core sense of self, guess what? You're going to have habits that the skinny guy is going to have. You're going to do the things that and think and behave like that person would behave and think. Unfortunately, there's conflation and conflict oftentimes with people's I am and their demonstration of it. They really don't believe that. For a while, they'll put it out and say, well, this is who I am. But, they really don't believe it. The highest level and more permanent level and most impactful level of change is transcendental change. What is that? That is when something greater than yourself provokes you to change. Usually, that is a belief in a faith, a God, a supreme being, or a system beyond yourself. When your why is greater than yourself. This is why back when I was in New York in the 80s, 90s, the Nation of Islam had a tremendous amount of success converting brothers who were locked away to change the way they behaved. Why? Because it delivered and gave them something greater than themselves. And this is true too when you hear brothers coming out of jail or just brothers and women too, in the way of their day-to-day life, when they have gone a certain way and then they are saved. That change usually trickles down. When that happens at the transcendental level, transformation change happens because identity is impacted. Environmental and transient change happens, so it trickles down.
Absolutely, absolutely, brother. Absolutely. Thank you, Wayne, for that. Absolutely. Now, Wayne, we've got some comments, brother. I want you to. I'm going to read some comments here, and so that being said, that sometimes when we're sharing certain information or giving certain truths, and though you've already addressed this, here's Sharito, one of my huge supporters here. Sharito over here on LinkedIn says, "In my opinion, dear Curtis and Wayne, if men of any skin color would believe in their hearts that God is the only man over and above us on earth, and put that belief over everything, that without God, colors of men and all other creations don't really matter." I know you probably addressed this to Wayne, but I want to hear your thoughts on this and just kind of.
No, I'm gonna let you address it because I
Okay,
know you like to address the spiritual aspect,
okay,
and this is
okay,
your platform. So yeah,
okay.
I'm a
Well,
coach, and yeah.
absolutely. Well, I'm going to take a couple of, I guess, pages out of Wayne's book, and say that, uh, to for us to ignore certain realities and to put them in our own perspective, that is a reality that we have, but it does not mean that that is the reality that another person is dealing with. And regardless of how we might see it, I think sometimes we as Christian people, and I am a Christian, we have a way of overly simplifying things. If they just do X, Y, Z, they'll, God can just help them, and things of that nature. Uh, and that's not always the reality. That's not always reality. I think there's obviously some fundamental truths. There's some things that we need to have in place, and unfortunately, because we have them in place, doesn't necessarily mean another person sees it or views it from our perspective. And that is the challenge that we're facing, is that because we may view it from a certain perspective, it does not mean that uh, an entire organization takes that perspective. So hopefully that answers your question, Sharito. Let's see, we got a couple more questions. So comments and questions. Scott says here over on LinkedIn, "I wish I knew about this before. Will there be a replay?" Absolutely, Scott. Thank you for joining, man. Scott is one of the supporters as well. So thank you for being here, Scott. There absolutely will be a replay. Marcia says here on LinkedIn, she says, "Love the acronym Wayne, VIP, value, identity, and purpose."
Thank you, sister.
Absolutely. And Henry has a question over here. It says, "Question: How can we align our mindsets and habits and beliefs with the power of eternal truth when you are new post-truth world publication, education dogma teaches that our language has no truth." Henry, uh, both for self-talk, conversation, and others. All right. Well, Henry, I think that it's important to know that all of this is about a mindset, and unfortunately, the mindsets. And I hope I'll try to answer your question as best as possible, Henry, in this limited time that we do have. But mindset is what all this is about, and unfortunately, not so much unfortunately about the mindset, but unfortunately, kind of what I alluded to earlier, we don't all see it the same way. And the reality of it is that there are people who have just evil in their hearts, man. Let's just face it. I have learned some time ago that this use a Christian vernacular, but this devil, there's no red suit, no person who wears a red suit with horns on his head. They're just people who do evil things. And I think that's the reality that we have to face. And that with that comes particular mindsets. And for me or anyone else to disrupt the system, or what's been established already, that in itself poses a problem. And I think we can't ignore that. And and in previous conversations with some good friends of mine, I was just recognizing and just realizing, I just came to a realization that when you're dealing with people from all walks of life, when you're dealing with people with certain privileges, and you don't even have to be racist, you don't even have to belong to an organization, but when you're dealing with people have who have enjoyed certain privileges, it can be very, very difficult for them, for these individuals. Again, all walks of life. It can be very difficult for these individuals to understand when things don't turn out the way that they have desired them to turn out. They can become angry because there's a loss of control, especially with people who have been prioritized in life, so to speak. I think that's a good word. They can become very angry. They can become very hostile because people, through their mindsets, it's hard for them to connect with other people's mindsets. And I'll say it that way. It's hard for them to review things or view things when they're sitting here. It's hard for them to see things from a different perspective. So when people have been prioritized in life, I'll use my daughter for an example. As much as I love my daughter, there are times where I have to absolutely say no to her. She gets angry. She gets upset. She gets to crying at times. And as much as that crying may work my last nerve, I have to try and remain still because she needs to know no. Not because I don't like her, but she needs to experience no. And because people have been prioritized over other people, or even in individuals within relationships, because people have been prioritized, sometimes it's difficult for these people to receive no. They become angry, they become hostile, they can feel like you're thinking, or they can feel like you may not like them because you tell them no, or you have to correct certain behaviors when certain behaviors have been allowed to manifest or to take place for an extended period of time. And when you have certain groups of people saying, "Hey, you know what? This may have worked for a time in a season, but no more." I'm, sort of kind of, I'm taking back a control that that's really always been mine. But through no understanding of my own, we've given up that control. Unfortunately, we didn't know that we had it. But it now becomes a time for people to wake up. And I think when people are starting to wake up, that frightens people who have been in control for an extended period of time. And it absolutely creates a power struggle. It creates a power struggle. When you step on someone's foot, do you not expect them to say ow or to acknowledge that you stepped on their foot? Or should they be quiet? So hopefully I've answered that question. And if that's not your question, please, if that's not the answer to your question, please clarify, because there's a lot to that question, Henry. Let's see here. Wayne, what else you wanna share something else with me? You got some thoughts in regards to what I may have shared with you, or
You did
something?
well, brother. You did well.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, add to that, brother. What you got for us?
I don't know where I read this. Of course,
We're gonna
those
put a
of
hole in this
you,
balloon tonight, brother.
those of you who read John Maxwell, the leadership guru, he says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less,
Mm.
right? And I don't remember who the author is, but someone that I read talked about leadership having four major criteria demonstrated leadership that that makes one truly effective in terms of that influence. And the first one is ownership. And when we talk about ownership, we're not just talking about ownership because we wear a lapel button that says, I'm the boss. We're talking about ownership where you step into the role and it's a commitment. Whether you're
Mm.
a father, a spouse, a teacher, or a CEO, the first role of effective and efficient leadership is ownership. The buck stops here. So if folks foul up the ball and drop the fly ball, if folks miss the goal, as the leader, ultimately, you're responsible and you must take accountability. If things aren't right at home, I tell the men I work with, stop pointing fingers. You have to own that. That's
Mm.
leadership,
Mm.
ownership. All too often, and I don't know if I'm responding to the question that was placed or the comment, all too often, we're pointing fingers. Look at that guy. He didn't do this. All too often, it's easy for us to show intolerance because of the difference in someone else's road to their own salvation. I say that word loosely, but to their own way of being and doing. We're busy looking at the fissures rather than the cement. Ownership. The second aspect of leadership is about ego. And again, we talk about ego. You talked about privilege and people who have been prioritized. That can build up an ego very fast, inflate your ego. The fact that you have a privilege, the fact that you belong to a certain society or organization, thinking, belief, credo, it then creates a us versus them, right? But also, when you walk into a room as a leader and you have not slaughtered, I tell my folks, you have to kill the ego or unlive the ego. You have to
Mm.
slaughter the ego. And that's hard because that means letting go of the self that protects you, or so you think. Does it truly protect you? Because your ego, though it serves you at time in a proficient way and efficient way by protecting you and keeping you safe, it can also create barriers between you and the people that you serve. And I said serve because leadership is about serving others, right? And building others up. A leader, a true leader, drives themselves out of business because you're always creating mini me's, people to replace you. And then there is empathy. Empathy is about understanding others, standing in somebody else's shoe to understand the perspective, the dimension of how they see their world, not from your vantage point, but from theirs. And so, as a leader, when you walk into the room and your teenage son has a different idea of what industry is and work, I mean, my kids had to teach me to be a better father by making me understand this one thing. I had to empathize and understand and remember what it was 40 or 50 years ago when I was their age. I had to step into their shoe and recognize that that's what they're doing. The natural ordinance of thing is to grow through the stages. And the same is true when you're a leader and you're managing others and their well-being and welfare and their productivity. You have to make sure that they are, somebody said this early, validated. You have to make them feel seen and heard. You have to be better than just a good speaker, a better listener from the heart. And lastly, is developing your why. We talked about this. As a leader, whether it's in the home, in the pulpit, at work, your why has to envelope and involve a community larger than yourself. You must be about a mission and a vision that is shared, where other people can buy into. Otherwise, it's forced labor. Somebody
Hmm.
working for you just doing it because they're getting a job or because they're afraid that you're going to fire them. Now, I had a boss, the best boss I've ever had, actually. And I said, her, that's not my wife. She's a good boss too, Dr. Audrey. but but my boss in corporate learned a lot from her. She's good friends with the family right now. Her style of leadership was of such that on days where we had to meet um, deadlines, if it happened on a Friday, and as the team didn't meet the deadline on Friday, and we knew that she would be up all weekend on her own getting it ready, because that's what leadership do. They take ownership so that it was delivered come Monday morning. Don't you know that I would get on as her right hand, get on the phone or on the Zoom or on whatever on the weekend with her, and then we would just hear the whole team. There were 21 of us. And unless somebody was taken away, and I know, about family and balance, but for the most part, most times we had that situation, more than 60% of the folks voluntarily would jump on to make sure as a team we had the deliverable done. Why? Because as a leader, the why was something that she made possible for all of us to own and believe in. It was shared responsibility. That's what a leader does. Whether you're leading at home, you can't go into the house as a tyrant, as the Ayatollah Khamenei, and you say, "This is it. I'll chop your neck off if you don't." Nah, it doesn't. Leadership is not about that. Leadership is allowing, and I say that because a lot of times we are demigods and gods, and we lead saying that our belief system, what we have, is greater than yours, and so you must buy into it.
Hmm.
But wouldn't it be better to, through demonstration, show the love that you want from somebody else than trying to lecture them into it, beat them into it, convert them into it? Just live it and be it. Become the change that you want to be and become and see. That's leadership in my mind.
Excellent response, Wayne. Absolutely excellent. I think it's interesting with leadership because, and I think it's so important to understand why, or at least where leadership has come from. And if we can understand where leadership has come from, we can understand that there's a huge mental health aspect of the leadership. And regardless of whether you are leading the correct way, and I'm using that loosely, but essentially leadership has come from, and this is leadership throughout the world. Essentially, the leadership model or the traditional leadership model has come out of a barbaric space. That is how it was designed. And it was more kind of the scientific view from a scientific perspective, so to speak. But, and so naturally now, as a result, uh, you don't get the transformative leader as Wayne has been speaking of, basically. You don't get the transformational leader. You get a tyrant. And this is the leadership that we have all been, unfortunately, to a degree, even in our churches now. This has all been the leadership that we have all been predisposed to, whether you're a Catholic, whether you're a Christian, uh, back in the day, well before many of us were even thought about, they were offing people. They were destroying people, families, millions of people, because they did not. They are trying to persuade people to become Christians or Catholics. This is just a way of life for the country, the entire world, so to speak. So to come out of this traditional leadership space, you are absolutely going to need someone to take you by the hand, so to speak. Because if not, you will succumb to your default mechanism. Because oftentimes, even for us as men, or when people get angry, when I get angry, oftentimes it's not about the thing in itself. It's about being out of control. Oftentimes, that's what anger is about. You don't have control over that matter or that situation. And so when we respond from that space, this is, in most cases, learned behavior. This is what we're dealing with. This is what the world has given us. And so for a lot of us, we essentially have to extract ourselves from those different things. It can almost feel like you might need to go into hiding or something like that. And obviously you don't have to go into hiding, but you have to be prepared to turn yourself off from the distractions and come into a place of healthiness, healthy relationships. Because first and foremost, before an individual can turn into this transformative leader, you have to have a peace, an internal peace that you have laid aside the weight that has ruffled our feathers so easily on internally. We have to be prepared to lay those weights down. We have to be prepared to sacrifice the very things that's causing us the internal conflict. And when there is internal conflict, oftentimes the internal conflict is not about so much about what we may have done, but the pressures that's been placed upon us. And many times, for a lot of us, we're responding to the pressure that has been placed upon us. So when we say we don't know where the anger comes from, sometimes that a lot of times is the truth. But we're responding a lot of times to the pressure, the surmounting pressure that's been placed upon us. And we can easily say, oh, what pressure? Well, if you're watching TV, if you watch TV or you see advertisement through social media, it's all pressure. It may not feel like you're forced or anything like that, but ultimately it's pressure. So it's important for us to understand. It's important for us to understand that this place of leadership that we've been dealing with as an entire world and in our different organizations, they come from a traditional mindset. And that traditional mindset, or at least how they've put it together, they've got all kinds of different models or modules or set up for leadership. All kinds of different styles of leadership. But it all stems from a barbaric mindset. And it is unfortunate, but that's what we're dealing with. So it absolutely takes a person to renew their mind, much as what Wayne was sharing with us. It takes a person with a renewed mind to step into this place and overcoming the power struggle, trying to reestablish a new set of fatigues or an armor that a custom made armor. So Wayne, a question. I'm going to read a couple of comments here, Wayne, over on LinkedIn. There was one for you from Sharito, and you may have seen it. But
No, my
she
phone is
says,
off.
Wayne, when we look around the world, more and more colored men are excelling more than uncolored ones.
I
Okay.
mean, men of color, not colored
Men
men.
of color. Okay. Men of
Yeah.
color, especially in the field of sports. What can you say about that for the men of color that are still, that still feel discriminated?
I'm sorry, would you repeat it again?
Sure. Okay. She says, Wayne, for you, when we look around the world, more and more men of color are excelling more than our counterparts. I'll put it that way, especially in the field of sports. What can you say about what can you say about that? And for the men of color that still feel discriminated.
Hmm. I'm not sure that that's it's a direct relation to tonight's topic. It sounds like a whole nother lecture, a whole nother opportunity to meet on it. But I will say this. The false narrative that a lot of people have lived by, because we don't control those who create the media and those who hold the pen, oftentimes oppressors subdue those subjects that they then dominate. And so the story comes from he who rules.
Hmm.
So a lot of times we don't know that out of the minds of men of color is greatness, excellence, par nothing. I mean, we have a history of being great at science, industry, the arts, athletics, music. We talk about sports and the arts a lot because oftentimes that's how people would like to pigeonhole us to see that we do. Unfortunately, we're not in a position when we create great breakthrough and innovation in science and the arts and so forth. We're not in a position to own those because of money and because of status, right? We work for someone, they take the privilege. So I'll just say that to say that it is not uncommon that men of color excel wherever they're given an opportunity and the agency to participate. If you look around here and you'll see that basketball, for example, in most urban areas in North America, basketball and baseball, football, those sports, wherever we've had a chance, men of color, to get involved in, we quickly rise to the top, right? And it's not to say I'm anti any other group. I'm just pro what we are about. I'm pro black and men of color because I'm here. My sons are, my father was, my grandfather was, and so I represent and I love myself dearly and the collective me. And so I want to represent in a light that's true, not one that is skewed and put up in front of the cameras for people to believe. We live in a land of make believe, other people's reality, not necessarily what is, but that is told that it is for us. And so, Sharita, um, recognizing that we are fully able and flourish in our greatness in all areas is the first reality. And we need to start admitting that and becoming emboldened by that reality. We're greater than a basketball or whatever. And by the way, those sports that we have been left out of, the games, the hockey and the golf and the lacrosse and so forth. Typically, it doesn't happen in communities, urban communities where there are a lot of people of color. Is for a reason, right? But in tennis. But what happens when we get involved? We're kept out with the gear, access to training, coaching, equipment, sponsorship. But when we do get in, what happens? And across the board, the education system, let us be real. We excel given even with unequal and level playing field, we still rise to the top.
Excellent response, Wayne. Thank you, Coach Wayne and Sharita. I hope that answers your question. And again, this tonight's conversation is not about us as two black men looking down on ourselves or asking someone to open a door for us. It is about us recognizing that that there's a state of leadership, and with that state of leadership comes mental health. And unfortunately, this is what we have to deal with. But again, as I kind of alluded to earlier, is that when you're dealing with systems, burdens that have been intentionally placed on you, the weight of something been intentionally placed upon you, there's absolutely going to be side effects. There's absolutely going to be a slowdown. There's absolutely going to be situations where just men of color are dealing with the pressures of life because these things are absolutely systemic. And that's just what it is. And it's not about the sports, be it baseball, basketball, football, whatever the sport might be. It's not about any of that because we know that, or most of you should know that that is a highly competitive space in all sports. Highly competitive. These men of color and men who are not of color, they are the they are the best among what they do. They're absolutely the best at what they do. So there's that leaves a much larger percentage of of men who don't fit into that criteria and who don't okay Wayne Sharito says thank you Wayne, basketball is only one kind of fruit in a huge basket full of an assortment fruits achievements for men of color. All right, so yeah, so she's saying thank you essentially. I'll
You're welcome. Mhm.
uh, leave that there. But in any event, so there leaves a huge percentage of men who don't play sports, but understand that there are just things that we just have to deal with. And we're again, this conversation is not about apologizing for any of it. We are just recognizing that with leadership comes mental health. It comes with the power struggle. And so I think Wayne, you talked about the overcoming the some of the power struggles. You gave some tips. Audrey says once your significant other the best half of you Wayne, she says once we realize we are enough, the barriers won't matter. Absolutely, absolutely. That in itself is a powerful piece, Audrey. It really is because I think that there's some truths that we have to come into. I believe, and before we come into those truths, there are absolutely those barriers that have been established. And again, whether we recognize them, whether we see them or we don't see them, or whether they have been, whether they're invisible or not, there are absolutely barriers that systems, I would say, create these barriers. But once you come into certain truths, those barriers fall away.
That's that you see why I'm allowed to shine. You see what I
Come on
have
now,
as
come on
my
now,
as
brother.
my support at home, my brother. She writes the
Absolutely.
script, she dresses me up, she sends me out the door. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. Much respect.
And I want to get through some more questions, but it's getting we in the hour, and
Sure, sure.
have
Absolutely.
I still have a litany of things to get done at the end of the day today before I call it quits. So I want
Absolutely.
to get through some questions. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Wayne, before we let you go, then give us some last details on how we. I know you've got a. Did you mention a book? Did I mention a book? I can't remember if I mentioned a book or. Well, I know you got a book
Yeah.
that you're writing. You'll put it that way.
Yeah.
But give our audience here some information on how we can get in contact with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm working on when the shift hits the man.
Mm,
And it's really to help men, all men. Well, I say all that's ambitious, but men across all platforms to recognize that the change that we desire, and I've had some bouts called trials and tribulations to be able to triumph, um, some challenges to champion. I've been there. I've fallen several times so that I was able to get up and overcome life-threatening illnesses, um, uh, uh, a breakup and a divorce, so to speak, overcome it, loss of property, been fired, just all of that stuff. And I've had to go through. So for me, there's been a lot of triumph through trials in fire. But by raising, like the Phoenix did, to understand that there were some common elements and principles that got me through all of those stages so that my other side, I came out feeling bigger, better, and bolder. I've then created similar patterns and systems to help men go through their own fire, their own challenges, so that they too oftentimes know that they're going through stuff, right? But don't know the how to get through it. I help brothers develop the muscles, the mindset to get through those so that their other side is bigger, better, and bolder. That's what I do. And I'll say that the book that I'm writing, been a long time, but I gotta get it out the door this summer. And it should be a must read because when the shift hits the man is saying, as we had said tonight earlier, that let's not become victims, but become victors. Victims mean you become fallible and you hold on to, oh, what's happening to me rather than what's happening by me. And when we talk about at the greater level, what's happening through me. So when we are able to get to that place of transition, transformation, and transcendence, then we can reign as kings to have our own kingdom, if that makes sense. So this is what this book is about. And any man can do it if he is willing to do so and prepared and ready to commit to the process. It's a lot of work. When I work with brothers, oftentimes, it's great to talk about strategies to get promoted or to go negotiate for more income or to network. All that is good stuff. But the same man who is in corporate or in the C-suite is the same guy that is in his underwear or pajamas when he gets home, isn't he? So what's common is the man. I like to work with the man within. And a lot of times when I get to that point, brothers run away. They can't complete it.
mm,
They can't face themselves. The truth, the ugly truth, stares back at them. There's no one to call on or blame. It's all about you. And so that's the work. That's the work. For folks to get in touch with me, and I'm taking clients and I'm happy to do discovery calls with folks. I'm actually forming a group right now, and that group is going to be no cost, just brothers supporting each other. If you're in a spot and you're feeling stuck and you'd like the support to kind of move to your next level, we have a loving, endearing group where we'll group share. And from that group, I'll probably eventually do some group coaching. And there's a lot more about what I'm offering this year, but I just like to leave it at that, Curtis, and not to cannibalize on your show, but to say that the best way to get me is VI my site, VIP transformativelivinc.com. That's VIP transformativelivinc.com. And there you will see all of my channels, including a calendar to book a discovery call so that we can see if we're a good fit to take us any farther in our relationship. Curtis, thank you so much for the opportunity today, my friend, my
Absolutely,
beloved
man.
brother.
Absolutely. I'm just honored to have you here, brother, and thank you for sharing all that you have shared with us, and just having the courage to do so, brother. Having the courage to do
Yes,
so because it's tough out there. So thank you, brother, and I will
pleasure.
let you go, brother, and we will I'll end it here, and we'll let you go. All right, and so we'll
And
talk with you next
I
time.
want to celebrate your audience, Curtis, because we do this. We show up in our different portals each night, each day, every day, with a commitment to serve others. And so the others that we serve are you, those folks that blessed us today and entrusted us with your time. Thank you for that opportunity to be on this platform and to share with you. I hope I added some value to your evening. Thank you and goodbye, Curtis.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely, brother. All right, we'll talk with you soon.
Please.
All right, guys. So there you have it here. And as we kind of, I guess, coming to an end here, just kind of give you just a quick recap here. We've talked about the state of leadership and mental health, overcoming the power struggle with Coach Wayne Dawson, and I purposely had given him the run of the show, so to speak, because he's a good friend of mine, and I love our conversations. I love him as a brother, and I absolutely respect him. And so, just to let him know, there is no competition between us. We're actually both in a coaching space, and so that being said, again, we talked about the state of leadership and mental health, overcoming the power struggle, and it is interesting that. This power struggle is what it is. It does remain. It does absolutely exist, unfortunately, and we have to find ourselves, or at least find ways to get through this power struggle. And as Wayne's wife, Miss Dawson, had said earlier, I love her comment. She says, once we all realize we are enough, the barriers won't matter." And that is such a powerful piece of information. That is a masterclass in itself. And I think that you have to work through the things that we've been told that spoke to us, or people in life, or situations in life that spoke to us that said we weren't enough. And so, again, life will absolutely speak contrary to what we've been given in different circumstances. People in itself, we are competitive by nature. We are competitive by nature as people, and unfortunately, due to that competitive nature, we we will prevent other people from shining, even if they are the best person for the job. Mm. Thank you, Sharito. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So that being said, we also talked about overcoming the power struggle, and Wayne shared some wonderful tips in regards to overcoming that power struggle. We understand that whenever you are dealing with leadership, especially coming from a place of oppression, being that this traditional space of leadership, I believe in all my being that it has come out of a oppressive mindset, and so uh, the results are a people who are dealing with severe mental health, especially if you are in the space of leadership. If you have not transcended, as Wayne mentioned, from that space of uh, from that space of traditional leadership, coming into yourself, coming into your greater self, understanding who you are as an individual outside of the armor that they have fitted us for, it can be difficult for us to come into again the uh, our authentic selves. It can be difficult, very difficult for us to come into our authentic selves because we are left with the unfortunate the armor that they have fitted us for. So that being said, guys, I don't want to continue rambling on. As Wayne mentioned, you can contact him at Wayne Dawson, if I believe. I want to mess it up. But guys, we're going to say ciao for now. We will talk with you soon. Great show. Thank you all for being a part of the show here. Thank you, Sharito. Thank you, Miss Dawson, as well, for supporting us and your husband, of course. Thank you, Sharito. Thank you, Marcia, over here. Thank you, Henry. Thank you. Let's see. We got. What's we got here? We had a lot of good questions here tonight. And thank you, Dr. Marcia, for showing up as well. Thank you, Scott. And if I did not get to your question, your comments, I do apologize, guys. I do apologize here. But again, we'll see you on next week, guys, for another show. And we're going to say ciao for now, and we will talk with you next time. Bye bye.